Hello everyone! Here is episode 12 of my gameplay series of Worldwide Rush. As always, I was given a copy of Worldwide Rush by the developers of the game. I couldn't make these videos without them. And also, I play Worldwide Rush on the Steam Deck, so there are minor graphics and gameplay differences compared to playing it on the PC. Last time out, I made an aggressive move into Canada with the intention of putting pressure on my two nearest rivals. One company has hubs in Chicago and Detroit, while the other has hubs in Washington, New York, and Montreal. Both seemed likely to want to expand into Canada, but I decided to get there first. Since then, it feels like both of the other companies have responded to me with their own expansions. I don't know if the computer-controlled companies can actually respond to the player like that, or if it's more simply that this was the area that made the most sense for them to expand anyway. Either way, before I do anything else, I need to defend my position in Canada. As I hoped, the routes I have operating out of the hub in Toronto have given me the majority of the passenger trust in Ottawa, so I'm going to build a new hub in Ottawa and expand from there. After I add the hub to Ottawa, I need to make sure that I protect Ottawa so that I continue to have the majority of trust in this city. And so I'll do that by adding routes to all the other cities that Ottawa has as destinations. So first on the list is Boston. I think for right now, I'm just going to create a bus coming down to Boston. We'll pass through a few other cities along the way, including Laconia, which is another city which I didn't previously had a connection to. I need to build out some roads, of course. And there we go. Next on the list from Ottawa is to Drummondville. So I'm going to add another route, but this time I'm going to start in Drummondville and come back to Ottawa because there are lots of passengers in Drummondville right now. So I'll start where the passengers are. And then I want a connection from Ottawa to Sherbrooke. There are a bunch of cities right around Montreal, and I really need to improve connections between all of them. So I'm creating this bus route, which is going to start in Ottawa, and then pass through Montreal, Drummondville, and then finally the destination that I needed from Ottawa, which is Sherbrooke. But this also allows passengers to get between all of these other cities. Next up, I want a direct connection from Ottawa up to Quebec. But as long as I'm going to Quebec, I might as well continue on to Rimouski. And so there we go. And then it turns out that I'm going to need a direct connection from Ottawa to New Bern because there is another company which also has a direct connection. I don't really want a direct connection myself between these two cities. New Bern is not a hub. I don't intend to make it a hub. And it's really too far away for me to want a direct connection. But the fact that another company has that direct connection is likely to cause problems for me if I don't also have my own connection. So I'm building out this bus route, which is going to come down to New Bern. And another problem with New Bern is that it's a little bit awkward even getting a train down to New Bern. And I'm going to continue on to Myrtle Beach, which is the nearest hub. This route is really there because it needs to be there. And so I'm going to start out with a smaller vehicle, an Endicott. I also passing through several cities that I don't really have connections to, like the city of Syracuse in New York. So just adding more cities and adding more direct connections. And I also need a direct connection from Sarnia up to Ottawa. I already had a connection between Sarnia and Toronto, but I want to extend it all the way out. And I've realized because other companies are making additional connections between all these cities. I really need a direct connection all the way up from Detroit to Quebec. So this one will be a train. There we go. A few more connections that I want to establish. First of all, there is this city far in the north, Chibougamau. I'm probably mispronouncing that. And I want to add a plane traveling directly to Ottawa. It doesn't seem like it really makes sense to actually build out a road up there, so I'm going to try a plane instead. And now that Ottawa is well established, I also want to be challenging the other company's control of the hub in Montreal. And so I want to add a couple of connections starting in Ottawa and passing through Montreal. And so the first one that I want is this connection from Montreal to Trois-Rivières. All of these French city names are a problem for me. I am guessing at French pronunciation. I am probably getting it wrong. I apologize for that. And then another connection that I want to add to Montreal is to another new city, to the city of Halifax. And so again, looking at it, I don't think it makes sense for me to add either a bus route or a train route. So I'm going to create a plane which will fly between these three cities. It has to start in Ottawa because that's where my hub is. But really I need a connection between Montreal and Halifax. Alright, looks good. And as long as I am adding more routes in this area, I want a direct connection again between Granby and this French name again, Trois-Rivières. Riviera. And so this will just be a bus. Again, as I was planning out this move, I was looking at all of the cities in this area and realizing which cities need better connections between some of these cities. And having planned it out, I can just add all of these cities directly, all of these connections directly. Okay, so I've added a bunch of cities in this area. I realized I want another big route, which is going to start in Ottawa. I'm actually going to swing all the way around and out to Brunswick in Maine, and then down the coast through many of the cities, connecting to Bridgeport in New York. This is really intended, and then I'm going to bring this train route all the way down to my next hub, which is Culpeper. And this route is really intended to compete with a train route that the other company has operating out of New York. And so I'm adding what I hope will be better connections between some of these cities and connections to some cities which the other company wasn't actually providing. And there we go. So now I have connections to most of the cities in New England, in the New England area of the United States, of course. And so I'm competing with the company based out of New York for passengers to all of those companies. Another connection that I realized that I want in order to connect all of these cities to each other and allow passengers to travel between them is this train route, which is going to start in Ottawa, but instead of passing on the north side of the lake to Toronto, it's going to pass on the south side of the lake and then come up through Buffalo and across the Niagara Falls, back into Canada, and then down to Detroit. This was specifically so I can have a connection between Buffalo and Detroit, as well as various other cities. And of course, I'm going to be building out a bunch of new rails as well. Okay, and I realized I don't actually have the money to buy this train. So I've been playing the game paused. I have started the game, starting to earn money. There we go. Once I have money, I will build out this train route. I'm going to let the game continue to play for a while and continue to build things out as I play to bring in additional money so I can keep building out routes. The next route that I want is to connect, really it's to connect Wilkes-Barre in Pennsylvania to Montreal, but of course I'm going to create it as a train which has many other stops along the way, ending in Culpeper and going from Montreal to Ottawa because Ottawa is my hub. Alright, I think that'll cover things in Canada. That I responded to the new routes that have been created there, and so now I can move to someplace else. I mentioned 2 companies I've competed with. There's a 3rd company I've been competing with down here in Mexico. Ever since I created that hub in Hidalgo del Peral, I've been intending to expand in northwest Mexico, but I've just been busy with other things and I haven't had a chance to do it. And one of the reasons why I wanted to connect cities in northwest Mexico is I actually have several cities who have passengers who have wanted to go to La Paz. And they weren't previously able to get there, but I discovered that this company operating in Mexico started its own plane from one of its cities to La Paz. This is very annoying because I was intending to build a hub in La Paz and now I can't because the other company has a higher trust than I do. So I'm going to build, starting with plane routes connecting to La Paz. So now those passengers who were taking the other company's planes, I hope will start taking my planes instead. And the next thing I want to do is, since I couldn't build a hub in La Paz, I'm going to build a hub in Cabo San Lucas. I'm going to add a road connection between La Paz and Cabo San Lucas. And since I now have this hub in Cabo San Lucas, there are a number of other connections that I should be making to this city. I want to connect to Los Mochis, and since it is also on the Gulf of California, I will connect the two with a ship. And I'm also going to connect between Guaymas and Cabo San Lucas. Again, since they're both on the Gulf of California, I will connect these two with ships as well. All right. So there's a lot more that I want to do in Northwest Mexico, but there are lots of things that I have to do in lots of places. Other things that I've been looking at is, at this point, I have these 2 planes which are flying out of Denver. And I also have passengers who want to get to Colorado Springs. All of the passengers who want to go on any of those routes are taking this bus between Denver and Salina. So I need to make sure this bus route has enough buses to carry all of those passengers. I keep expecting, or my fear is, that I'm going to end up with a pile of passengers in Salina who are unable to get to Denver and therefore unable to get to any of those other destinations. So I've expanded that bus route to take care of that. And the next place I want to look at is down here in Freeport. Some of these cities down in the Bahamas and in the US nearby, Miami, West Palm Beach, are getting overrun by passengers who are trying to get to the Bahamas. And so I want to improve the connections between these cities. And so the first thing I'm going to do is add a hub in Freeport, and then the ship directly traveling from West Palm Beach to Freeport And then another thing that I need to do to make it easier for passengers to get to and from the Bahamas is expand this train route, which is currently going from Miami up to North Charleston. I only have the one train on it right now. It's not running frequently enough. One thing I've been realizing about these trains that I've created many long train routes, and they can carry lots of passengers, but because the routes are so long, they don't arrive very often. And that by itself is causing a problem because you end up with a huge number of passengers waiting for the next train every time. And so I really need to be running more trains on all of these routes so they can come more often. So that was one of them. Next up, coming up to Raleigh, because Raleigh and some of the other cities in this area, in particular I'm looking at Goldsboro, are getting overrun with passengers. And these are passengers who don't actually want to be going to these cities, but are stopping these cities because it's convenient for them to transfer to other cities. You can see I currently have 255 passengers in Goldsboro who want to go to other cities but have stopped here for various reasons. And so my solution to that is going to be to expand several of the routes that are currently passing through Goldsboro, making it easier for passengers who are currently there to get to their intended destinations. All right, so looking at the various cities that have the worst problems, trying to decide which of my existing routes will be most useful for doing something about that. And so the routes that I've created, I think, should now improve my connections to Goldsboro. I have this train as well. Again, the problem isn't the size of the train, although that is a very large train. Part of the problem is just the number of trains, so I'm going to add a second train to this route. I'm going to do the same thing over in Ottumwa. It doesn't seem worth talking through all the details, so I'm going to speed up the video playback as I'm doing this. Unlike in Goldsboro, where indirect passengers were just accumulating there and causing problems for me, in Ottumwa, the indirect passengers are mostly managed, but it's the direct passengers from Ottumwa who I just don't have enough vehicles for. So Ottumwa has passengers for Hannibal, Cedar Rapids, Chicago, Davenport, Des Moines, Springfield, lots of different places. And I'm relying on vehicles to connect them, and I just don't have enough vehicles. And I've run out of money once again, so I'm going to return to the normal play speed, so I'll be bringing in income, and I can build out the vehicles that I need. And so again, I'm going to let the game play at normal speed for a while, and then once I've accumulated some income, I will pause the game again for all the changes that I want to be making. And I'm already running into issues where I'm running out of some of the vehicles that I want to be buying. At this point, I cannot buy any more Sanfords this month. But okay, Ottumwa is taken care of, so there are a couple of other places on my list where I really need more vehicles right now. One is from Rochester, here in New York, to various locations. And so I have this train connecting from Culpeper up to Toronto. Again, train just isn't running frequently enough, so I'm going to add a second train on this route. can see, it takes 21 hours for a single train to complete the route from Culpeper up to Toronto and then back. And it's not often enough. So having the second train, at least there will be a train stopping in all those cities every 10 hours. And the next one I had is Cincinnati. Again, it's a small city, even though it's a hub, so it's completely overrun by indirect traffic. I have this train from Salina to Culpeper. Again, the route's so long, they're just not coming often enough. And if I were to make the trains bigger, it wouldn't actually help, because the city is getting overrun by the number of passengers that it has. And so what I need to do is add a train, and I'm actually going to add a second route. I tried this train route once from Cincinnati to Washington, and it turned out to not be profitable. But as time has gone on, it looks like if I start a train in Cincinnati, I add a stop in Dayton, and then at the other end, rather than stopping in Washington, which is a hub controlled by the other company, I stop in Culpeper, which is controlled by myself. I'm hoping that this slightly longer route will be profitable, and I have now enough trains stopping in Cincinnati that should be less of a problem. All right, so I've been working through a bunch of places which I considered urgent because I just had too many passengers in all these cities. And now that I've taken care of all of those, I can actually move on to this month's tasks. And so the first task on the list is optimizing vehicle profitability. It turns out that many of the routes that I'm running, the vehicles that I'm running on these routes are losing money. They're just not carrying as many passengers as the vehicles need to be profitable. And so one of my tasks is to downgrade many of these vehicles that the game has recommended. So I've looked at these vehicles, I've made my own decisions about what to downgrade, and I've started going through that now. Like I've done before, I don't have a whole lot to say about this, and so I'm going to accelerate the video playback for a little bit. I've talked before about how, in order to improve the pacing of these videos, I plan out everything that I'm going to do in each video in advance. And so when I'm playing through this game, I have a list of actions that I'm going to take, and I can just go through them basically as fast as I can. Because I'm planning out everything in advance, sometimes I make plans, and then by the time I get there in the game, the situation has changed enough that sometimes I have to rethink some of my plans. But generally, this strategy has been working well for me. I'm able to play in these videos at a fairly high pace, at least what feels like a high pace to me, because I've put probably excessive amounts of time into planning out everything beforehand. Even with all of that planning, this time around, the game gave me a list of 40 different vehicles that it thought I could downgrade or sell in order to improve their profitability. And so, even though I've looked at all of these vehicles in advance, I decided what I want to do with all these vehicles. The act of going through all of these vehicles took me sufficiently long in real time that for this playback, I'm actually playing this at 4 times the speed that I had been playing the game at, which is why the cursor ends up jumping around the screen somewhat. It's because it's just going that fast. So yeah, I look at all of these. Some of them I look at it and think, oh yeah, good point. I'm losing money here. I'm going to downgrade these. Other cases, I'll look at things and realize the route that I have is serving some sort of purpose. And so I want to make some other change. Right now, the game had told me that the buses on a connection between Rolla and Cookeville were losing money. I actually prefer that route to that other route from St. Louis to Cookeville. And so rather than downgrading the connection from Rolla to Cookeville, I downgraded the connection from St. Louis to Cookeville. In other cases, some of these are planes, and I need those planes. It's the only way that that route is connected is because of that plane. There isn't really anything I can do about it. I want that route badly enough that I'm willing to lose money on it as long as it takes. My expectation is that if the route runs for long enough, eventually enough passengers will want to use it that the route will become profitable. Sometimes I just have to wait. On the other hand, this route from Green Bay to Atlanta, for a while I needed lots of planes. Now I have better train connections between the two cities, and so the planes that I have aren't really making money for me anymore. I can actually remove some of them. And finally, for this ships from Hamilton to Myrtle Beach, it turns out that the reason why I'm losing money on some of the ships is because they have a high minimum number of passengers. And so what I've done is actually increase the capacity on the ships, but the ship, even though it has a higher capacity, has a lower number of passengers it needs to make money. And so I'm dealing with a problem with a not profitable route by actually upgrading the route. Okay. Took care of that. It took me a little longer to explain what I was doing than it did to actually do it, given that I sped it up. So I've moved on to the next task that I was given, which was to create a hub in Roswell. So I expanded into the city of Roswell last episode. I've now created the hub there. Return to normal speed. I've also paused the game at this point because I have a bunch of money to work with. So since I have this hub in Roswell, of course I want to make sure I have connections to all the cities that have destinations from Roswell. Passengers who want to go to Roswell to all these different cities: Albuquerque, Alamogordo, and Lubbock. So I want to add routes to all of these cities. There are a bunch of nearby cities, Hobbs, Midlands. I think as long as I'm here, I might as well make sure I have good connections between all of these cities as well. So I added that connection from Roswell to Lubbock. The road went through Hobbs. I'm going to create a direct connection from Hobbs to Roswell. You can see because I downgraded a bunch of my routes, I actually have some Sanfords available again. On the other hand, at this point, I've run out of Endicott's. And so that was one connection that I needed from Hobbs. The next one is from Hobbs to Amarillo. Always end up looking at things, mapping things out. What's the best way for me to get to Amarillo, especially since my hub is in Roswell? Well, I'll start with a direct connection from Amarillo to Roswell. That should work for the passengers from Hobbs who want to get to Amarillo. They can take one bus from Hobbs to Roswell and then the second bus from Roswell to Amarillo. I also have passengers in Amarillo who want to get to Lubbock. And for this connection, I really need a more direct connection between the two cities. And so I'm going to add that in. And again, as I'm doing all this, I'm choosing buses of different sizes on these routes. I'm hoping that the buses that I'm adding are going to be big enough to support all of these routes and not be so large that I end up losing money on them. So I'm going to have to keep an eye on them to see if I need to expand any of these bus routes in the future. So there was a connection from Midland to Lubbock and also to Roswell. It has to start or end in Roswell because it's the hub. And then I also wanted a connection from Midland to Abilene. It turns out I'm now close enough. Abilene has a connection to the Dallas hub, so I might as well connect this one to Dallas rather than Roswell. Just thinking, as long as I'm creating this hub in Roswell, I might as well connect all of the cities sort of in this area. And speaking of connecting everything, I connected from Roswell to Alamogordo. Alamogordo is also a good city for hub. One of the things that I look at is some of the cities on the map are shown as tiny circles, some of them are shown as triangles. In general, if a city is marked as a triangle, that means more passengers are going to want to go to that city. And so that makes that city a good location for a hub. So since Alamogordo had a triangle, I'm going to go ahead and create a hub there as well. And then immediately add some connections from Alamogordo. I need one up to Albuquerque. I have the one already to Roswell, and then the last one that I need from Alamogordo directly is going to be to El Paso. Although, again, I'm going to start in El Paso because there are lots of passengers who want to come from El Paso as well. So it makes more sense for me to start there. And accidentally opened up the city list menu, didn't need it. And then a couple more connections. Just double checking what I've done already. Where I need. Again, might as well connect to everything in the area. There are passengers who want to get from Silver City to Alamogordo, so I'm going to go ahead and add that connection right now. Alright, now I'm out of Endicott's and Anteros. And there we go. And one more, I think. Passengers can probably get from Los Alamos to Alamogordo by going through Roswell. But they might as well go directly. I know there are passengers in Los Alamos who have Alamogordo as a destination. So I'm going to just add a direct bus route connecting those two cities. Okay, so that's the second task done. I've built a hub in Roswell. I went ahead and built out a bunch of other stuff because why not? The third task on my list is more connections to Atlanta. All right, let me look at the fourth task on my list. Fulfill Jackson demand. Jackson's looking pretty good. You can see there are a couple of exceptions. I mean, the big problem that Jackson has is many passengers are traveling to Jackson because it's a hub and they want to take a train to another city, Mexico City, Monterey, Washington. This task to fulfill Jackson demand is really about making sure that all of the passengers who have Jackson as their starting point can get to their desired destination cities. And so that looks better, but there's still some changes I want to make. I still want to expand this route through Jackson, which is headed to Mexico City. So again, I need more trains. I'm going to buy these two trains back to back. And so they're going to start next to each other. They should spread out over time. Having two trains running next to each other isn't really better than just having one bigger train, but given the number of passengers that I have that I want to be transporting on that route, I don't want to wait long enough before adding the second train, so I'm just going to add them both now. I'm going to hope that they spread out over time. So that was one connection through Jackson to Mexico City. I have this other connection from North Charleston. Again, I just need more trains on all of these routes. And so I'm going to add a Pioneer 8. Things are getting difficult because I'm starting to run out of trains as well. Not quite there yet, but want to think through, want to make sure I'm making good choices about which trains I'm adding in various places so that I can add as many different train routes as I can. The next one on my list that seemed like I had potential problems with was connecting, I'm connecting from Jackson to Ardmore. And so this train down to Houston doesn't give me a direct connection to Ardmore, but it gives me a pretty good indirect connection. So I will expand that train as well. And then a few more cities from Jackson. I need a better connection down to San Antonio. And so to do that, I'm actually going to build out a new train route, which starts in Jackson. And the big reason why is just stop in all of these cities, first of all, along the coast down to Houston, and then to San Antonio, and then back sort of inland to San Antonio. But then from there, the rest of the way, all the way down to Mexico City. And again, I'm sold out of Ironclad 1000s, so I have to use General T2s. I think I've talked about this sometimes in the past. There are two different companies which produce buses that I can use. There are two different companies which produce trains that I can use. One of the companies, the vehicles are more profitable if there are fewer passengers on that route. And the other company, the vehicles are more profitable if there are more passengers on that route. And so I'm trying to choose which vehicles to use on which routes. And at this point, I generally want to be using the Ironclads because they're going to be more profitable. But sometimes I end up having to choose the General T2s or the Pioneer 8s because they're what is available. And again, these long train routes, it's not just about the capacity of the trains, it's about how frequently the trains run. And so there I actually downgraded a train so I could add a second train to that route. And pretty close to done. I have these two planes operating out of Jackson. This plane from Jackson to Merida is losing money, although it's just started to break even. And so at this point, there are enough passengers that not only is that route going to be profitable soon, but I actually need another train, or I need another plane on that route. And the same is true for Montego Bay. I had already gone through this. I had the one plane on this route, and that plane is still officially losing money. But there are so many passengers who want to go to Montego Bay that the second plane that I added has already paid for itself. And the first plane is going to come around to being profitable soon. Okay, I think Jackson is now good. I think I've added connections to all of the cities that Jackson needs connections to. It should be profitable now. So we'll come back to this more connections to Atlanta thing. I've had this as a task several months. It seems like I get it 1 month and it disappears the next one, and then I get it the month after that, and just alternates on and off. So here we are again. I have connections to all of these cities. Every single city anywhere in the world that has passengers who want to go to Atlanta, or that has passengers from Atlanta who want to get to that city, can get there one way or another. So I feel like I'm not sure what the issue is. I don't know why this keeps showing up as a problem. I could add more direct connections. Looking around, the only direct connection that I really want to add right now is the one that I'm doing right now. This train, which I'm going to add starting from Eau Claire and then sort of sweeping through a bunch of cities and ending up in Atlanta. And this train is going to give me direct connections to a few cities that have passengers to Atlanta that may not have had direct connections before. I said down to Atlanta. I'm actually going to keep going all the way down to Miami. So I'm adding in connections to Atlanta from, say, Milwaukee and Decatur in the Midwest, and also to Jacksonville in Florida. And so now that I filled everything out, I'm going to go ahead and add that train route. And again, that train route should improve connections between a lot of different cities, which is why it seems worth doing. But I hope that connecting to those 4 cities in particular will also satisfy this task for more connections to Atlanta. Like I said, there are other cities which I could connect to Atlanta, add more direct routes. I'm going to hope that's good enough, because there are just so many other things that I want to do. So one of the other things that I wanted to do is, I've talked about hub managers for many episodes at this point, and how I had added hub managers in a bunch of cities and they weren't actually working the way that I wanted them to. I've been leaving the hub managers on the maintain routes instructions, where I had hoped that that would mean that they would continue to use all of the routes that I've created and not add any vehicles on any routes which I'm not currently using. And it turns out that wasn't what was happening in practice, that they would end up selling off all of the vehicles on some routes sometimes. And sometimes when the routes were profitable, they'd be trying to upgrade the route. If it couldn't actually buy the vehicle that it needed to upgrade it, it would sell the vehicle anyway. And it was making a mess out of my strategy. And I also found that occasionally the hub manager would add vehicles to routes where I had deliberately removed all the vehicles from those routes. I did not want passengers running on these routes anymore for whatever reason. But since I had created those routes in the past, the hub managers would add new vehicles to those routes, even though I deliberately deleted all of them. So, as I've talked about, there have been a number of updates to the game after the most recent update, 1.1.12, I think. The behavior of hub managers was changed again. It seems like now hub managers do what I want them to do. I've spent some time testing sort of offline, and they seem to work now. If I tell it to maintain routes, it maintains the routes. So I'm going to experiment with adding a few hub managers back in. The next thing that I just finished as I've been talking through those hub managers, was I've added my first building to a hub. I've talked about this before. The idea that you can buy buildings in hubs and they give you bonuses. And unfortunately, at this point, I've actually moved past it, but I keep running out of vehicles to buy. I can actually do something about that. I can buy a building a wholesale manager. And now when I run out of vehicles in any one month, in the following month, instead of getting one new vehicle, I'm going to get 2 new vehicles that I can buy. And so the number of vehicles that I can buy each month increases, but now it's going to be increasing faster. And so hopefully I'm going to get to a point where I stop running out of new vehicles constantly. And now I've just fallen way behind. I'm just going ahead and doing things because I want to get them done. And I'm talking about things that I've already done at this point. The other thing that I wanted to do, so that company down in Mexico, super annoying. My solution, it added that flight to La Paz. Before that, it keeps buying hubs in cities that I keep buying as cities that I wanted to add hubs in. I just never get the chance to do it. The solution to that annoying company is going to be to buy the company out. And so I just went to the company, I tried to buy shares for it. I realized I don't actually have enough money on hand to do that right now. It is important, I need to come back to that. But I'm going to move on and do other things that I can afford to do right now. So these are more minor changes. I've added a bunch of routes. I've expanded a bunch of routes because I had a desperate need to. And now looking at the other cities around the game, there are a bunch of other routes where there are pretty good connections between a lot of these cities, but they're not good enough, and passengers are starting to back up. And so, depending on what I look at, in some cases, I want to add additional vehicles to certain routes. Other cases, I want to create new routes to better serve these pairs of cities. I keep looking at things and deciding, okay, if I have a lot of passengers in Dallas right now, is the problem with my existing connection from Dallas? I have passengers who want to get to Monterey. Is the problem with an existing route from Dallas to Monterey? Or is it I need a new route between those two cities, even though I already have one? Or is it that I actually need a route between other cities entirely, because the reason why I have passengers who are backing up in one city is because just another route isn't able to do what it needs to do. And so hub managers are never going to be able to think through things in that way. Even with the hub managers, even if they work, it's going to be important for me to continue to check all of the cities to make sure that I have the right connections between all of the cities. But right now I'm just going back and filling in some of the connections that were missing or that need to be better. So Austin, a bit of a problem, just added a connection to Wichita Falls. I'm going to add a train on this route from Austin down to Mexico City. And then go ahead and add, I think, one more train, again, on another route from Florence to Mexico City. Okay, and I've run out of money again. So I have the game paused. I'm going to unpause the game and then add that train. Pretty sure that's the right thing to do at this point. Pretty sure I want to make sure I have this covered. So there we go. Making money. Should be making money. I'm making money a little more slowly now because money that was going into various hubs before was coming directly into my pocket, but because I have the hub managers, the money is now going to those hub managers. They will pay me out based on their profits at the end of the month, but it means that during the month I'm actually taking in less money now. Alright, and so with that train, Austin has improved, I hope. So I started in Dallas, moved down to Austin. I'm trying to do this in sort of a systematic way. I want to improve my connections to San Antonio. I have passengers who want to get from San Antonio to Matamoros, coming from a couple of different places. They end up transferring in San Antonio. And so what I want to do is expand this route between Matamoros and Houston. It seems like the best way to make it easier for these passengers to get from San Antonio to Matamoros. I also have lots of passengers in Corpus Christi who want to get to Houston in particular is the biggest problem. So I'm just going to add another bus to this direct bus route between the two. Or I wanted to add another bus. I am running out of buses to add. I'm going to add a Gannett, which is actually larger than I intended to add, but it's what's available at this point. And again, choosing the Gannett rather than the other bus, which is a similar size, because the Gannett will continue to be profitable at a lower number of passengers, which I think is what I'm really targeting. Come across Ciudad Acuña. I have lots of passengers who want to get from Ciudad Acuña to Laredo and then down to Mexico. And so I can actually, it makes sense for me to add a fairly large bus of foraker to this route. There we go. added 2 forkers, in fact. And now again, I'm just running out of vehicles, and even the 2 forkers I don't think is going to be enough, so I'm going to add a Wyndham. Alright, and then coming down, again, I've looked at all of these cities, and I'm making decisions based on what I've seen before. The next problem is this little city of Matawala, which has lots of passengers who want to get down to San Luis Potosi City. And so the way I'm going to help with that is actually by adding a longer route all the way down to Mexico City, because there are just enough passengers between all of these cities. It seems like it makes sense. And Matawala kind of has a problem because it's not on the train line. I could probably add a train connection anyway, but I just haven't because it's just not on the train line. And so that means I'm dependent on buses to connect all passengers to and from Matawala. And just continuing sort of down through Mexico, Ciudad Victoria has passengers who want to get to Matawala. They couldn't get there directly, even though I had a connection up to Monterrey, and then a different connection down to Matawala. That, since it's 2 separate bus routes, it was too long for the passengers to be willing to do that. So I've now created a direct route between those 2 cities. Still a little indirect, because you have to cross over that mountain range. You can't quite draw the roads as straight as you might want to. The next one I was looking at is San Luis Potosi City. Has a bunch of passengers who want to get to Querétaro City. San Luis Potosi is actually a hub controlled by the company in Mexico. I would really like to control that hub myself, and so I want to make sure that it's as easy as possible for passengers to get to and from San Luis Potosi City, because that will increase my trust in that city. And so one way of dealing with this company down here in Mexico is to buy out the entire company. Another way is to buy out some of the individual hubs. There's another potential connection to San Luis Potosi City, which is to the nearby city of Guadalupe. Right now, can't actually get there. I can fix that. I'm going to add a bus route from Monterrey. And I have to start Monterrey because that's my hub. But really, the reason why I want to do this is so I can connect Guadalupe and San Luis Potosi City. And again, as long as I'm connecting some of these cities in this area, I want to add a connection to Aguascalientes City and then down to León, which again is another hub controlled by the other company. And this bus route will allow passengers to get from Guadalupe and Aguascalientes City to various useful locations. And because it has to start in Monterrey, it's not going to be profitable initially. I hope it'll be able to pick up enough passengers between those 3 cities to eventually become profitable. Next up, like I said, want to be connecting lots of connections to Hidalgo del Peral. Right now I'm just going to add a couple. These are cities that have Hidalgo del Peral has as a destination. So we'll head to Chihuahua. As long as I'm connecting to Chihuahua, Chihuahua has passengers who want to get to Ojinaga. So I'll add a route which is connecting both of those cities. Coming down in the other direction, I have passengers who want to get from various cities to Tepic and Guadalajara. I would like to be able to establish a hub in Guadalajara, except the other companies already there first. Again, very annoying. But I'm going to add this route down to Guadalajara to improve my connections here, see if I can start taking control of some of these cities. Again, I'm really sort of struggling with issues around which vehicles to buy because so many are sold out. And next up on my list, I had Mazatlan open up a moment ago. When it was open, you could see that it had passengers who want to get to the city of Culiacan. I think I earlier added a plane connection to Culiacan. I want to add a bus connection as well, so that passengers will be able to get directly to Mazatlan. And again, I'm going to start this bus in Mazatlan because that's where the passengers currently are. Okay, so I've added a bunch of connections down here in Mexico at this point. There are more connections that I'm probably going to need. I'm going to come back to them at some point in the future. And having sort of covered the southwest of the map, or at least the parts of the southwest that I'm connected to, I'm going to start working back across east. And so the next city that I wanted to look at, well, this is really... thinking about some of these cities sort of along the coast. And I have this connection from Houston to Atlanta along these cities along the coast. I'm going to add another train on that route. Again, can't choose the trains that I really want to be adding. But another connection I had, which is really from Baton Rouge, is down to Quetzaltenango. So again, I'm getting a bunch of connections from various cities down into cities in Central America. It makes sense to connect these with planes. Okay. Planes are expensive. I did the thing again. I let the game run until I had built up a bunch of money, and then I paused the game. Sort of that move of letting the game run until I have some money and then pausing and then building out while the game is paused is so automatic for me at this point that I may not always call attention to when I've done it. But what I'm doing at this point is waiting until I can buy a 340 Express, which, because of the distance between Jackson and Quetzaltenango, is the smallest plane that I can fly between these two cities. And so again, I don't actually have passengers who want to get from Jackson to Quetzaltenango, but because I now have this plane, passengers are going to be willing to travel to Jackson to take this plane. It means, like some of my other plane routes, the plane's probably going to operate at a loss for a while, but I hope if it runs for long enough, it will start making money. The next city that I was looking at was Gulfport. Gulfport has passengers who want to get to Santiago de Cuba in Cuba. Right now, the way they have to do it is a little bit awkward. They actually end up going up to Atlanta and then come back down to Miami, come across to Havana, and then down to Santiago de Cuba. Decided I want to add a ship just directly from Gulfport to Havana. I'm guessing there will be enough passengers who want to take that ship from various other cities that it'll pay off eventually. So I'm going to try it and see what happens. Moving away from the coast a little bit, the next city I was looking at was Little Rock, which I need to improve its connection to Houston. So there we go. Added a bus from Little Rock to Houston. Since Little Rock is so close to Memphis, I'm having it continue onto the hub in Memphis. And so there are a bunch of other cities sort of in this area, which I have looked at last episode, really. And so I'm sort of skipping over them and then coming over to Macon, which is sort of my next problem area. I want a direct bus route between Macon and Jacksonville. Right now, or up to this point, I've been dependent on various longer routes that go through both of those cities. And I've realized there are enough passengers who want to go directly between those two cities that I should really have that direct connection. There's some other cities that I really need to improve the connections between Macon and those cities. You can see I have 500 indirect passengers in Macon right now. So I'm going to add another vehicle to this route to Memphis because I really need more passengers to be able to get from Macon to Florence, which is along the way. I have lots of passengers who want to get from Macon to Atlanta, so we'll upgrade this route as well. Again, I have a bunch of buses on this route already, so the solution here isn't to add another bus, it's to replace the buses that I do have with larger buses. So replace the smaller bus, the Hubbard, with a Wyndham. I have one more connection that I really want to improve from Macon. It's this connection from Macon to Athens. This time, looking at my options, I can't upgrade any of the vehicles I have. I have to buy a new one. So there we go. Alright, so I think Macon is looking better at this point, or it will be as all those new vehicles do their jobs. So thinking about where I want to be going next, and again, come down, work my way down from Macon. We'll look at Albany. I need to improve, really I'm improving my connection from Albany to Knoxville. I have passengers in Albany who want to get to Knoxville, but the way I'm going to do it is just by directly connecting Albany and Atlanta. That should help those passengers who want to get to Knoxville as well. I also want to improve the connection between Albany and Macon, and I have an existing route, so I'm going to upgrade this one. And the changes I make are dependent on the vehicles that are available at this point. Working my way south, we'll look at Tallahassee. There are a number of things I want to do with Tallahassee, but what I'm going to do right now, I have this issue where there's this other company which added this bus route, which is ridiculous. It starts in Washington. It's been around for a long time. It's caused me problems in a bunch of ways. Starts in Washington, goes in a big circle through Chicago, then down through Tallahassee, and then back up towards Washington. And passengers keep ending up stuck in all of these cities because they think there's a direct route. This bus will get me from Tallahassee to Memphis. And so it makes sense for me to go to Tallahassee if I want to get to, say, Dyersburg. And the thing is, that bus doesn't actually work. The route's way too long. There aren't enough buses on that route. And so it's causing problems for me that Tallahassee is now backing up with passengers. So I have to add this direct connection from Tallahassee to Memphis to take passengers in that direction. I also need a direct connection from Tallahassee to Washington. And we'll stop at a couple of cities along the way, Charlotte and Culpeper. Charlotte because I need that connection from Tallahassee to Charlotte, but then Culpeper because I need to be connected to one of my own hubs, and then end in Washington. So all those passengers who are just accumulating right now in Tallahassee actually have a chance to get to their destinations. And then one more route that actually makes sense. I have enough passengers who want to get back and forth from Tallahassee to Atlanta, either directly or because they're headed to other destinations from one of those two cities, that I need to expand this route. And so I don't think I need a lot of expansion at this point. I'm just going to add a Hubbard. Alright, so that was some cities south of Macon. We'll head east a little bit. Next on my list was Savannah. The only connection that I'm really concerned about for Savannah at this point is passengers who want to get from Savannah to Tampa, who are relying on this bus. Because of the train routes that I have going down to Miami, Tampa is not connected on the train route, so it's not actually well connected to these other cities. I'm reliant on these bus routes. And so add a bunch of buses to this bus route between Miami and Myrtle Beach, which stops in both Savannah and Tampa, and will hopefully make it much easier for passengers to get to and from Tampa. But sort of the immediate problem that I was dealing with was passengers from Savannah to Tampa. Oh no, I'm sorry, I misspoke. There are bus routes to Tampa. The problem is, and train routes to Tampa. The problem is there aren't train routes to Orlando, and passengers from Savannah are trying to take the bus to Orlando and then connect from Orlando over to Tampa. And that's where the problem was. That's why I needed to expand that route. And then coming down into Florida and looking at these cities, Orlando and others, again, I just need to improve the connections between these cities. So here we go, add more buses between Orlando and Miami. And stopping in all the cities along the way. Everything's good. I worked on the one bus route which is coming through Savannah. I'm also going to work on this bus route which is coming through Palm Bay and needs to get to Macon. And there we go. Add another bus to this route. It should pay off. And I try to point out when I'm pausing and unpausing the game, and I keep missing it. So I've paused the game again. If I haven't said that already, I have a bunch of money. I'm going to spend it down. Getting close to the end of the month. I want to do as much as I can before the month ends. Running out of vehicles, which is making some of my decisions harder. But things I want to look at are this connection from Cape Coral down to Havana. I have this direct ship, but passengers are backing up in Cape Coral, so I'm going to add another ship. And then basically I've worked my way down to the tip of the mainland in Florida, which is Miami. Again, passengers who want to take trains in lots of different directions. I've built out a bunch of those, and also who want to take ships in a bunch of different directions. And so I'm going to upgrade some of these ship routes. I need more passengers to be able to get from Miami to Havana. So there we go. I need more passengers to get from Miami to Nassau in the Bahamas. So again, we'll add this direct connection. We'll just upgrade one of these ships. And then one more. I have passengers in Miami who want to get to Kingston in Jamaica. I don't actually have a connection between Miami and Kingston yet. I don't have any connections down to Kingston. So I'm going to go ahead and add a direct flight. Looking at it, Cuba's in the way. I like the idea of having lots of ships connecting all of the islands in the Caribbean. It just doesn't make sense in this case. So I'm going to add a plane. Start with a small plane. Hope that's enough. No, if it's not enough, we'll see in the future. We'll see how it holds up. Okay, so that was Miami. I looked at West Palm Beach earlier because it was in kind of a crisis. I created this hub in Freeport. Freeport itself is doing okay, but it has a bunch of passengers who want to get to Nassau for one reason or another. So I'm going to add another ship to that route. Alright, looks good. And I also have passengers who want to get directly from Freeport to Cape Coral. And they're doing okay right now by heading to Miami and going that way. As long as I have this hub, though, and as long as I want to have ships running all over the Caribbean, I'm going to add a ship directly between Freeport and Cape Coral. I wanted to add a water taxi. My next best option is actually the Petite Voyager, because it can be profitable with fewer passengers than the other options that I still have. Alright, and so that was Freeport. Continuing to work my way down, the next city I want to look at is Key West. Key West is backed up to lots of different places. So the biggest concern is passengers who want to get from Key West to New Girona. The way they get there is this ship taking them to Havana, which clearly isn't big enough. I'll add a much larger ship. And then coming down into Cuba itself, start looking at how much money I have, how much time is left on the clock. I know what I want to do. The question is, can I do it? The first thing I wanted to do is add or expand this plane, which is connecting Havana to Georgetown, because passengers are backing up in Havana. Of course, I had this great plan to upgrade to this plane, which is going to cost me $2 million, which is a little more than I have right now. So, again, I've been paused. I'm paused the game. Right now I'm really racing against the clock. I want to do as much as I can before June 1st, but building anything out will require more money. And we can see I completed my tasks in Roswell and Jackson. Did as much as I wanted to do for the vehicle profitability problem. Atlanta still seems stuck at 86. I don't know what I can do about it. Especially at this point. I don't think there's anything I can do this late in the month to improve any of those connections. So I'll stick to my plan. I'm waiting to have enough money in hand that I can upgrade that plane from Havana to Georgetown. The next connection that I wanted to upgrade, again, this is all about, am I going to have money to do this, is between Havana and Cancun. And I'd like to upgrade to this A180, look away the capacity that I think I need. But of course I need money to do it. So I'm just caught waiting. I should get there soon. And I don't always talk through like why I choose sometimes to upgrade a vehicle and why I sometimes choose to add another vehicle on the route. Think through all of that sort of ahead of time. Look at the frequency of the vehicles. If I have, what I'm sort of aiming at this point is most routes I want to have vehicles arriving every 6 hours. If they're arriving every 6 hours, I assume I have enough vehicles, and then what I need to be doing is adding bigger vehicles. And so that's what's happening here. That's what happened down to Cancun. And then if I'm upgrading a vehicle, if I'm replacing a vehicle with a bigger vehicle, there's always a question of which bigger vehicle to choose. And I look at how many passengers are actually trying to get between the various cities and decide sort of what looks like the right size vehicle. So it's real weird that I don't always talk through it, but it's because I plan it out all in advance. I hope my planning works out the way that I intended to. And there we go. We have made it to June 1st. So we either have completed or failed the tasks we were given last month. We now have new tasks, as always. Again, now seems like the time I need to stop. I need to spend some time planning. So I will do that, and I will come back next episode and take things from there. As always, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. This is where I say like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you next time. Thanks, everyone.